Okay, is it okay to start now? Okay, thanks. Welcome everyone to the Career Readiness and Job Placement Team's Career Conversations webinar series. This is our second session this semester, brought to you by the Strategic Partnerships and Workforce Development Division. My name is Renee Liang, and I'm the Job Placement Coordinator for Arts, Language, and Communication, and I would love for the rest of the team here today to introduce themselves as well. We have Alexa, Laura, and Brittany.
Hi, I'm sorry. My name is Alexa Moore. I'm the Job Placement Coordinator for Society and Education, and I look forward to hearing from everyone here on the panel today. I'm super excited that you all are here, and thank you for coming.
I'm Laura DiColita. I'm the Job Placement Coordinator for students with the meta major of Business Entrepreneurship and Management, and I echo what Alexa said and excited to be in a virtual room with such amazing women.
And I am Brittany Sneed. I am the Job Placement Coordinator supporting science, technology, and health. And again, really excited for everyone to be here today.
Thank you. And today we will be chatting about the topic of empowerment in the workplace with some amazing women in leadership. I am extremely excited to introduce to you all the panelists that will be sharing their expertise in this particular topic. But before we begin, I would like to thank everyone in attendance today, and also to those of you watching later, as this will be recorded and put onto our website. And thank you to the panelists, our team, and the audience for taking the time out of your busy schedules and making this webinar possible. And a special thank you to Professor of Communication Studies and Coordinator of WMLA, the Women's Mentoring and Leadership Academy, Ms. Danielle Powell, and for the members of WMLA for joining in today. And we have four amazing professionals here with us today in the Zoom room. Teresa DeBar, the Senior Director, People Partner at Workday. We have Andrea Weaver, the Diversity Manager at NextGen America. Anita Bashirs, the Account Manager at Matthews and Potestio. And Melissa Medrano, the Talent Acquisition Manager at NGM Biopharmaceuticals. Alexa, Laura, Brittany, and I will facilitate this webinar, and we would like to begin by asking our expert-led panel to tell us a little bit more about yourself. Teresa, can you please start us off?
Sure. So my name is Teresa DeBar. My current role is a people partner leader at Workday. Before, as I think about my career journey to this point right now, I just reflect on my own college experience. I recall being, a high school student and thinking about, well, what's going to be my next step into college. And I didn't grow up in a family that had this mindset of course, you're going to go to college and I've set aside this fund for you. It's more like, okay, if you can get a scholarship, then have at it. And unfortunately, I was not a scholar. So I didn't get the traditional path of, right out of high school, going to a four-year college. I actually went to a community college. And then very quickly got into my career. And I was really fortunate to get into recruiting, which was a booming market at the time. And so my college education kind of took a back seat for a really long time, because I was so successful in that recruiting, endeavor. And then, I did a career switch into leadership development. And that was the point where my boss said, you know what, you need to go back and get your degree and I'm going to pay for it. And so that really became like a big catalyst for me. And I went back to school and I got my degree. And after that tour of duty and leadership development, I was able to get a role in people partner, or as a HR business partner, and have been doing that ever since. Love it so much. And so I'm very passionate about leadership development, about organizational design and effectiveness, of course, talent movement and talent matching, and diversity and inclusion.
Thank you, Teresa. And Andrea, can you also tell us a little bit about yourself as well?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name's Andrea Weaver. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am a DEI manager, or was DEI manager now at NextGen. I also am extremely passionate about all things humans in and outside of the workspace. I firmly believe that diversity, equity, and inclusion does not start and stop at the workplace. As a matter of fact, it's probably the last place that a lot of us think about it or should be thinking about it. It usually starts at home and just in our everyday things. And for me, I have a really interesting career. I was in sales for a really long time. Then I switched to being an EA. And being an EA, contrary to belief, we run the world. So we get a chance to see everything behind the veil and really get an understanding about how the business works. I was really lucky to be able to, because I'm a people person and I could take those skills that I had from being in sales, really repurpose them in the tech space and an office space to bridge the gap between our executives and staff. And in that work, you also end up kind of getting into the people's side of things. This is when it was just HR. We didn't have people teams. People teams came later. Diversity, equity, inclusion departments came later. Retention teams came later. Everything was under HR, and just trying to keep up with how cool it was to work at Google was really the North Star. Now we're really diving deep into our company's cultures to really find out what actually works and really even evaluating how we see each other in these spaces. Even as a Black woman in this space, I too have to acknowledge some of my bias or my own personal lens, right? Or getting out of my echo chamber. So a lot of my work is really that deep dive into the work, and it's all of the things, right? So just like eating or your nutrition, it's not just what's on your plate, it's also your environment, your influences, things that stress you, things that don't, things are easy, right? And finding your way through and navigating. And so that's where I live in the DEI space, is really helping folks navigate and radically change their organizations. Instead of just talking about it, I want you to walk it.
Thank you, Andrea. That's really cool. I think, yeah, the work that you all do is really amazing. And Anita, can you also tell us a little bit about yourself as well?
Sure. Well, I'm already really inspired. Thank you. I've had a really odd career. My career has just been mainly based on saying yes to almost everything when the opportunity comes and knocks. I started out my career about 10 years of admin work, started out as a receptionist, definitely did the EA work, totally agree with you. EAs run the world. We know everything going on. I found myself getting into PR agency work, and I did 10 years of PR work. I was both on the desk in client services as well as in the background, HR, internal operations, grew into some marketing roles there. And I have taken some breaks here and there from the corporate world. I even had my own dog walking business for a while. I've done my share of freelance work. So kind of just, I'm a lifelong learner. I'm always interested. And I think so much of every opportunity you get is just being really aware of the opportunity that's there and building your network of people. It always comes back around. Recruiting's been a pretty common thread through a lot of my positions, but I do believe in the power of relationships more than anything else. And the job that I have right now is actually the president of the company is someone I worked with 25 years ago when I moved to San Francisco, that we wrapped back around 20 years later and met each other. So I'm really happy to be here today, and anything I can say to help and inspire will be a gift to me as well.
Thank you for sharing, Anita. We always say how important networking is, so I totally agree with that. And last but not least, Melissa, can you also tell us about yourself and the work that you do as well?
Sure. My name is Melissa Medrano, and I have a PhD in molecular biology and microbiology. I graduated in 2008 when it was the first recession that I have in my memory, at least. Well, no, there were others. And I ended up wanting to go into industry, didn't want to do an academic postdoc or the traditional academic route for a scientist. And so I ended up as a recruiter. I kind of fell into it and have been in industry ever since, and spent 5 years at agency recruiting, and then 6 years at a company, a small small company called Gilead Sciences, which is now large. And now I'm at a smaller company called NGM Biopharmaceuticals, and we're a biologics company. We do a lot in a lot of different areas, from diabetes, obesity, NASH, or fatty liver disease, and ophthalmology, as well as immuno-oncology. So we're getting into the cancer space. And basically what I do is I hire scientists and clinicians all day, every day, and have been doing so for about 14 years. So it's fun. I enjoy it. I enjoy talking science to people that have been doing it, professionally when I didn't. And I think it's also really great. I do a lot of DEI work as well. And I also try to do a lot of work kind of on my own, to really try to help people transition from academia to industry, just because I found myself in that venue back in the day, and ended up becoming a recruiter. And so if I can help people avoid the pitfalls that I underwent when I was trying to find a job in industry, then that helps. So
Thank you, Melissa, and everyone for sharing all of that with us today. Now, I would like to hand it over to Brittany to get into the topic of discussion today.
Yes, thank you, Renee. And thank you for giving all that extensive background information about yourselves and letting us get to know you today. And so we're going to talk about empowerment in the workplace. And it's an important topic to consider as you all move through your career and gain valuable experiences that lead you to your dream jobs. And so we will have a Q&A session, but if at any point, anyone in the audience, if you have any questions you'd like to ask, please feel free to either use the raise hand feature, or you can also type your question in the chat box. You can also feel free to say, yes, Queen, or however you feel like you want to react to anything that is being discussed today. And I also, before I begin the first question, I'm not going to ask each person every single question, but if at any point you feel that you need to answer it, just jump right in. And thank you, Megan. So I'm going to start with Teresa. Could you be so kind to kick us off by telling us your thoughts on what is empowerment in the workplace?
Sure. When I think about empowerment in the workplace, I put a lens on it from an organizational design point of view, or from a people partner point of view. And I think about role clarity, because ultimately where I see organizations and individuals getting stuck is not really knowing very clearly where their role begins and ends, and how that transitions to other people's roles. And it's also about being really clear on what decisions are yours to make versus other decisions that you need to float up. And getting that clarity is a real foundational thing, I think. But ultimately, what is empowerment? It's just this feeling, right, that you have some element of control or some autonomy to make decisions and drive things, and assert your point of view, and can put your own fingerprints and funnel your creativeness into an outcome. And so to foster that, it really just comes down to brokering that clarity of what is my role and what decisions do I have within my control.
Thank you. That is very deep. Already we're starting so deep. And because this is the general question, I did want to open it up to anybody else if they want to answer this question, since it's and again, it's what is empowerment in the workplace. I love Teresa's answer.
I actually thought about this a lot before we came to this, and I feel like empowerment in the workplace, it does come from other people, but it's also so much about yourself and advocating for yourself and asking for things for yourself and getting comfortable with being like, here's what I do for this company and here's what I want from this company, I guess. And so I think about it as, if you're not getting what you need from a company and yet you're putting yourself out there to do what you are doing and go above and beyond in your role and stuff like that, then that might be a time to move on. But I also think that empowerment does, of course, come from your manager and people who will speak to what you can do and what you contribute. And so but the biggest thing that came to me in thinking about empowerment is, how can I empower myself? And how can I make sure that, and granted, that's not the end all be all, right? You still have to have supporters, you still have to have advocates and sponsors and things like that. But if you can advocate for yourself and be an even keel sort of person who says, I'm not being emotional, but this is what I need to get to my next steps, then I think that is so important.
Thank you, Melissa. Oh, and Andrea.
Yeah, I think being empowered. The word empower is such a strong, a very specific word, right? It's talking about what fuels you, how it sends you on a trajectory. But both Teresa and Melissa did a really great job of talking about the different ways to be empowered, or to empower yourself to feel like you have ownership over the choices you make. And I think at the bottom line, there is a lot of power in choice. And the only way to know what your power is to know what your options are. So I advise most anyone, when we are looking at, especially Black and brown women, when we're in these spaces and trying to let our voices be heard, it's not as easy as just, let me just assert myself. It's not. You got to learn how to play. There's a game to be played. And I say game, right? But it's really like a system that we're navigating, right? And that's for everybody. That's not even a Black and brown disenfranchised people thing. That's a workplace thing. And so how do you find your space and niche to thrive in? And the best way to do that is to ask questions, because it furthers your power in choice. And I think that's kind of what I wanted to piggyback on, because I think sometimes when we, one of the things that I've learned working in DEI is sometimes our language is also really, it boxes us in a little bit. So we start talking about who we are in the role, or how we want to show up at work, but it's really who you are and how you're showing up, right? That's a difference. So it's even more of like, are you married to the work? Are you married to the job? And that's two different things. When you're married to the work, no matter what, you're going to shine through. If you're married to the job, it's going to waver if your company, freezes over, right? Or some catastrophe happens. Now you're lost in the universe because you've connected yourself to something that moves. But like even Melissa, that's amazing to have all those degrees and go, you know what? I'm going to use this, my knowledge, my network, to get people to see something else and be able to get into this space. So it's not always just about like, let this job just be everything. No, it's who you are and how you show up is what empowers you and informs your choices.
You're right. Education is so important. And I feel like you can't advocate for yourself unless you know either where you want to go, or at least some idea about the research that you've done within your company of like, where are my options? Where what can I do with my background? And it's just like I tell people, like, I never thought with a science background that I would become a recruiter. So it's about thinking outside the box. You're absolutely right, Andrea. Like, it's you have to always be thinking about not only what am I good at, but what is around the corner? What is that I'm not, you know, right? Most careers are a straight path or a path upward or whatever. What am I not seeing that might be to the side or a pivot or a something that, you know, like you too, you know, going into the EA, like if you're a people person and if you're, it's true. I actually have always said that EAs make the world go round. And
Thank you.
when I interview people, I say, how did they treat the EA? Or how did they treat the coordinator? And that I think brings up an important point too, is that you never know where people have come from in their careers. You never know what people have come up through or been through or whatever. And so it's always important to talk to the people or to figure out, you know, kind of where has everybody come from? What are the different walks of life that people have moved here from? I think that's so important. And I just read this is totally off topic, but I just read a great article today that was like how not to hire toxic people into a workplace.
Right.
And that to me is right. You want to be open and flexible, and you want to make sure that you're finding people who are open and flexible as well, and are looking to expand their skill sets and not just move up, right?
Yes,
Everybody wants to be a director one of these days, but you have to be able to, you know, bring up those around you as well.
around you. Thank you all so much for kicking it off with this first question. And yeah, I was going to ask Anita if you'd like to contribute. What is empowerment in the workplace?
I think I'm just going to be nodding my head a lot during this
I know, that's how I
entire thing.
feel.
I agree with everyone so much. One of my favorite clients that I work for is Netflix, and it's because I feel like they do such an amazing job with creating a workplace that is empowering. Their DEI initiatives are through the roof amazing. And I love them because their motto is freedom and responsibility, which is you are responsible for yourself at all times. You're responsible for how you perform, and they trust you to make the best judgment. And this is the opposite of what everyone hates, which is micromanaging. And this is the way to get out of it, is to be that kind of person that you're always going to be reliable. You're always going to be responsible for what you're responsible for. But I think a lot of self-empowerment also comes from empowering other people, all the people around you. Create that safe space where people can have those honest conversations and really help each other out. It takes practice, and it's not always easy, and you won't always have a welcome audience on the other side. But if you're consistent with how you approach it and your message, you will feel empowered and you will empower, in my opinion.
I love that. Yeah. Andrea and the snaps. I love that. And I just wanted to say the first question, I don't know if you saw, there were a few heart reactions. So it really resonated with folks in the audience so far. And I will turn over the next question to Alexa.
Thank you, Brittany. So Melissa kind of mentioned this a little bit, and she talked about advocating. And so this next question for Andrea is, how do you make sure to advocate for yourself, and how do you brand yourself?
So advocating is it's really easy, actually. It's really writing down everything you do and you've accomplished, even if it's just day-to-day stuff, because your manager doesn't necessarily know what you've accomplished. So if you're not tracking your own stuff, you can't expect your manager to do the same. And I don't mean your manager should ignore you. What I'm saying is, imagine having 10 people that you're managing. You can't always know everything someone's doing or even keep track. What you're looking at, like EA vision, right? EA see every single tree. but the people that we support see a forest. All they want to know is the forest going, right? Are we growing? And they're just moving with the forest. Meanwhile, the back of the forest is on complete fire. And so we gotta like wrap it up, right? And so I would implore you to really, it sounds daunting or not necessarily like, well, they hired me for this, why wouldn't they know? It's not that. You have to be able to speak to your accomplishments. It's not bragging, right? It's not beating your chest and saying, look at me, I did these great things. No, it's, I did this. This is how I got here. And so when you have those review conversations, hopefully you guys are having reviews at your job, but having those conversations and saying, yeah, over the last whatever, this is what I've done. This is how I've shown up, right? And not only does that help you at your current job, it helps prepare you for what you might need in your next role. Your next role may not be a upward change, but it might be a lateral change. You just need a couple of things to kind of fill in those blanks, right? And on the back end, it adds to your own confidence so you can speak to that. Because when I'm talking and having one-on-one coaching conversations with folks, a lot of times they're like, well, I don't feel comfortable like bragging about myself. Well, if you're just talking about something that you're proud of, it shifts, right? Your language is just automatically different. And then just advocating for yourself starts when you start interviewing for a role, right? Not letting people push you into a corner, knowing exactly, not even exactly, because there are no absolutes, but being clear about the type of work environment you want to work in, at least the type of manager you want to have, especially if you're early in career. Is this, if they say upward mobility is available, then ask them what has been the last 2 or 3 people that they promoted and what was their track, right? Because that's a real thing. How long ago was this? How did they get there, right? And if it was just by their own merit and it just kind of happened, then you should probably think about, okay, so who do I link up with? And someone here said something about relationship being really important, and growing your relationship within your workplace, not necessarily like drinking buddies. I just mean connecting with people in different departments so you know what's going on, and then you can figure out what you want to do. So that's my, and then branding. It's, again, once you have a foundation of knowing what you bring and how that fits into whatever the puzzle piece it is that you fit in at work, your brand, and I think, was it Anita? I think it was Anita, was talking about being responsible, right? Being your own accountability buddy when it comes to making sure you show up at work, right? So if there's a deadline, make sure you're communicating, right? But your brand, I shy away from the word brand because it's kind of, for me personally, people love that word, and it's becoming more of like influencer more than it is like really projecting who you are and your abilities and what you bring to the world, right? And so that is more of some practice and really writing it down, who you are, having your own values. It took me forever to write my bio. It took me forever to write my values because I felt like writing it down confined me. But what it really did was help me get really clear, because when you have those, that's how you funnel everything you do. What's important to you? Why am I taking a job that, has sweatshops somewhere? That goes against my values, so I can't work there, right? Or for me, being impactful is really important to me. I will not stay at any job that I am not impactful. I don't mean you see me from the mountaintops and I'm shouting. I really mean I'm changing lives while I'm here, even if it's a small speaking up for someone and saying, hey, can you let her finish talking? Right? And so you'll find your voice in that, because even your own values, your own brand is living, it lives with you. So it changes over time. And as you're growing professionally, so does your brand. That also means that you have to be vulnerable and a little transparent about not only the good stuff, but some of the things you mess up. If you want to get a dissertation from me about all the things that I have messed up, that I learned from and then got better from, please email me. I will send you a list. because it's just no way we're always going to be perfect, and people respect that because now I can trust you, even if I feel like maybe you're lacking these skills, but I know you're going to work hard to do better. And those are the people that we want to hire. Those are the people that we want to see in organizations grow.
That's great. I love that. And, I would love to build on that in terms of, a perspective of an introvert and somebody who really is not comfortable with self-promoting. And what really helped me is to think about who cares about my work, right? Like, I'm doing this work, but who actually cares about the outcome of what I'm doing? And how important is it that they know where the status of that work is at, or how that work that I'm doing is actually going to make their life better? And so when I framed it that way, it made it a lot easier for me to craft a communication in such a way that it didn't feel like it was about me. It felt like it was about them, right? And as soon as I made that shift, it really brought up more and more of those kinds of opportunities, like, oh, this person needs to know about this, and this is what they need to know. And here's how I'm going to make sure that, I get this information across. I think the other key thing to that is, especially in today's day and age, collaboration. Like, nobody gets anything done on their own, right? And I'm so thankful for all the people that I collaborate with. And so when there's an opportunity for me to highlight the work of other people, that in and of itself is a self-promoting thing. You don't think about it. You think about how you're shining a spotlight on someone else, but by doing that, you're shaping your brand. And the only thing I love to say about branding and self-branding, and I agree that's been a buzzword for a really long time. And I remember reading something about, like, what is branding, and I love this definition of, it's this accumulation of experiences that you have, whether it's an experience with a soft drink or anything. It's see, and the quality of that experience is if you apply that to yourself, essentially every time you interface, or every email you send, every conversation you have, all of those are an experience that you're creating, and it's accumulation. And so your brand takes a long time to build, and it's constant. You never arrive. Your brand is just an ever floating thing. And so I have that running in the back of my mind as I think about every experience that I can create or interaction that I'm going to jump into.
I love that. I
Thank
put
you,
it in the chat, but
Teresa.
I wanted to say that it's an experience. It was like, oh, that's right. I love that.
I really loved when you said too that, when you want to make something impactful, like if you're not doing something impactful, then it's like, what am I doing, right? Like, even if it's just one person, and both of you kind of talked about like that, like changing someone's life is very empowering, and you're empowering someone else too. And yeah, I really love that. That resonated with me a lot because I too feel like if you're not impactful in the work that you're doing, and that's not for everyone, I guess, right? But it resonates with me that I feel like you should be making some changes in someone's life, whether it's that really small, like the example was perfect, Andrea, when you said, can she finish, her sentence? So even the little things like that really matter because those type of situations really happen. So thank you both so much for your response. Did anyone else want to touch a little bit on that, or Laura can ask the next question?
I just think quickly on that is it's important for those of us who've been impacted by other people and empowered by other people to give back. And that's really why I do a lot of this. Is I had a lot of people who helped me along the way, and yeah, they didn't have to. And so that's why I do a lot of what I do, a lot of the outreach that I do, and a lot of the resume review and interview prep, and things that are not part of our day to day. And that's how I think we can all give back to each other, is pay it forward in terms of when I was a PhD student applying to jobs and I didn't know what I was doing and I applied to like everything and anything. You know what I mean? It's like, I think that we can all help move it forward. And so like, even when people don't think that they've benefited enough to be able to pay it forward to somebody else, I think that everyone always has something in their back pocket that they can use and help people with.
I agree 100% with all of you. And when I think about, I agree with the word brand too. It's a little done, but when I think about who I want to be in a workplace, I want to be the kind of person that everybody wants to work with. And what does that mean? You know, what I need is what everybody else needs. So for me, my main things are be responsive, be reliable, and be kind. And I feel like that's the baseline of my brand. And then everything else is on top of that. And Teresa, I love what you said about the experience and accumulation of it, because I believe that with jobs too. When I was hiring for entry-level PR jobs, it's one of the hardest jobs out there. And I only interviewed people who had worked somehow in customer service. I wanted to see that you worked retail. I wanted to see that you waited tables. I wanted to see that you worked in the service industry, because there is nowhere to hide in those industries. And you learn customer service better than anywhere else when you're in those kinds of jobs. Don't think that those jobs aren't valuable. Those jobs have huge value, and it's a big part of your story, and it's something to be proud of. Because I'll tell you, everybody that's done those jobs, including me, knows everybody who hasn't, and by the way they behave. So all of your experiences are really important to who you are today, and there's something to pull from every one of them that will be relevant no matter what the job is. So I think figuring out like what's the most important to you, how you want to represent yourself throughout whatever circumstance you are in, is what kind of builds the essence of who you are in the workplace.
That's amazing, Anita. Well said. So we're gonna kind of talk about a little bit something different, but you guys have all had sort of different areas of your career in different spots. So how, Anita, I'll start with you. How have you maintained confidence even when you had self-doubt, either early in your career, middle, whenever you feel like is a good story of when you've maintained confidence when you had self-doubt?
Everybody has self-doubt and most people have it every single day. So I think the first thing is just recognizing that it's normal. It's normal to have a moment where you're not sure if you said the right thing, or, or how do I approach this? It's important to know that you don't know everything. It's important to know that you can't know what you've never done. So sometimes that nervousness is just a part of excitement. And if you can kind of like turn nervousness into excitement, then it's contagious in a positive way. But just sitting with it, just recognizing it, feeling it, and then deciding, hey, what do I need to feel okay here? Like, what is it that I need to realize that I can do this? Or if I can't do this, I think the biggest thing in the world that is the most admirable is courage. And courage to ask a question when you don't know something is very empowering to other people too. Don't be afraid. So when you have that doubt, listen to yourself, ask what you need and for yourself, and then ask for what you need to get through it. But don't let it cripple you, and don't think that you're the only one that feels that way. Everybody to some degree does have imposter syndrome and nervousness, and we're in situations where we don't know what to do. So I feel like the best thing to do is just, like we've said here all along, be honest, be open. The minute that you're vulnerable, you create that opportunity for somebody else to feel the same way. And then everything's way more authentic. So you're not going to be perfect. Nobody is. And I loved what Andrea said. When you're not perfect, it's okay. Like, say it, own it, like, and move on, don't let it weigh you down.
Great, thank you. Teresa, could you share a story of a time in your career when you've had self-doubt and how you were able to maintain confidence through that?
Oh gosh, I can't think of one story that's like this, pinnacle moment, but I will share that it is something that I can remember as early in my career, and it's something that keeps coming up, right? It's not something that ever probably will go away. And I think that's an important thing to understand. And especially working with a number of executive leaders, women who are at the C level, right? It's still showing up for them, right? And so I think that just understanding and knowing that it's a little gremlin, and not to like feed that beast, and just know that it's that critical mind inside of you, talking, and not to actually give it too much credit, but instead to find your inner wise mind, and sort of talk yourself out of it. And so that's really been my strategy. Over time, it feels like the intensity of that voice has gotten smaller, and the speed at which I pull out is faster. So that's like encouraging. I like that. I mean, I know that gremlin's always going to be there, but it's a lot more tameable, and I really attribute that to kind of going, oh, there it is again. It's that thing. It's going to come up again. Okay. And then I talk myself down, it's like, okay, wait, what do I know to be true? Okay. How many times have I felt this way already before, and what's happened before? Oh, I always figured it out. Okay. Am I going to figure it out again? Of course I'm going to figure it out again. And so, having that ability to have that dialogue has been super helpful for me to navigate. And I think the other thing is just finding that support group for yourself, right? And somebody that you can confide in and share that with. I think people are often surprised that they're not alone in feeling that way. And it always kind of surprises me sometimes when my peers, say, I'm so intimidated by you and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, what, me? Like, what are you talking about? I'm intimidated by you. So I think that we're all kind of in our own head. And to the extent that you can have that trusted partner, that trusted advisor, that you can have a safe place to share some of those fears once in a while is really healthy.
Great, thank you. I love that you said acknowledge it, and then sort of check it and be like, look, is this real? Have I survived before? I have. I've done an amazing job, really questioning that and making sure it doesn't lead you. Anyone else want to weigh in on either a time they've had self-doubt and maintain confidence? And
this is my favorite topic, because I'm constantly, daily, all the time doubting myself. I mean, it never stops. I mean, I wish it wasn't that way. Now, I can speak to things that I know for sure, right? But it's not the struggle Olympics. I have to tell myself that, right? And I use struggle Olympics in different forms. But when I'm talking about in myself, struggle and ease live in the same house. Which one are you going to choose? Now, there's one that you got to go up the stairs to the attic. You got to pull it down. You got to do all this work to get the same result, or ease because I think, can't remember if it was Anita or Teresa, but what is true is already there. So name it, buckle it up in the passenger seat. They don't have a license, so they can't drive, right? Even bringing up imposter syndrome, imposter syndrome is the symptom of something else, right? And I think sometimes we get really caught up in what that is. And even me, I was on the hamster wheel of oh, it's imposter syndrome. No, I feel embarrassed. I'm afraid. What if I mess this up? What if I say the wrong thing? I'm rough around the edges. So I'm constantly thinking, how do I say things that land well? And not changing who I am, right? And that's a delicate balance for me. I struggle there a lot. But that part of naming it, it's not a ghost anymore. It's not something that's hiding under the stairs. It's no, come on, everybody. We're afraid, or I have anger, or I'm sad, or whatever. You're naming it, putting it in the car, and it's coming with you, because it does help sometimes, because it's also a stop sign. And just pause for a second. Let's just see where we are. So I'll give you a specific example. Going from an EA to not even doing the work of a DEI manager, but the label itself terrified me. I was like, oh, I don't want to cuss, but I said the S word. And I was like, oh, are they going to find out that this wasn't my role before? And it's like, yeah, girl, they just promoted you. Like, what's your problem, right? But it's having those conversations with yourself and being friendly and being kind to yourself, because you have to give yourself grace. You have to be okay with failing. You can outwardly say, I'm fine, and all the things. And I just, like I was saying, I just finished writing my values, and one of mine is flexible by nature, but sincerity in choice. And it's, any of us can pretend to be flexible. Sincerity, though, you have to really dedicate time to that, right? Because you can't care about something you don't know anything about. And I think we could turn that light on into ourselves and just be a little bit more kind, because it's not the end of the world.
Absolutely. That is great. Anybody else want to add, or should we move on? Renee, I know you have a next question. Oh, Melissa, I think you're muted.
One quick thing, I've noticed a couple of articles out recently about sort of don't buy into imposter syndrome and things like that. And I guess it's interesting because my sister is a literal rocket scientist and has worked for Lockheed Martin for a long time. And I was a scientist and now I'm a recruiter. And she has told me about her feelings of imposter syndrome, and but I guess I've never felt that way because I've always been a workhorse at my companies. And so that's, I guess, what I want to bring up is I've never felt imposter syndrome because I've always known how hard I've worked. But I feel like we're all, if you're at a two-year college, or if you're a first-gen person, you understand working hard. And so I guess I want to prep people for not becoming the workhorse, or not becoming the person who just is like, this person works like a demon, and so we're just going to put everything in their court. And so I guess I've never had imposter syndrome because I've always known how hard I've been working. But where I get the kind of whatever syndrome it is I'm not getting promoted as quickly as I would like, or I'm not getting the recognition that I would like because I'm a workhorse and I'm seen as a workhorse. And I think that's a really important point, because it's especially a consideration for people who are first generation educated, or first generation in the professional industry. And so that's one thing I just, and it's a sort of more an awareness thing and a soapbox, so I apologize, but but it's also something that I have encountered throughout my career in 14 years in recruiting. Whereas in science, you don't see that as much because everybody's a workhorse. Like, that's the nature of the job. If you're a scientific researcher, you're working 20 hours a day, just to stay afloat and stuff like that too. So that's, it's not a message, it's more of a soapbox. So apologize, but I think it's a thing.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And I think it goes back to the advocate of realizing I'm a worker bee, but I'm not moving forward. So how do I myself and make sure that I am getting the recognition and the promotions that I deserve? So absolutely.
Especially when I see that I have the highest workload of anybody that is at my level. And, if special projects are what gets you promoted, how do I get on the special projects instead of being the worker bee or the workhorse? Yeah.
Totally. Does anyone want to add to that? Of any strategies? I know people felt that way before.
No, I love that. I was thinking about especially being a former recruiter and in my experience as a people partner, I got some really great advice early in my career, which is your years of experience only counts if your years are cumulatively different. If you're doing the same thing for 10 years, you only have 1 year of experience. So don't kid yourself, right? You need to actually learn and grow and stretch and do new things. Otherwise, you don't count that and think that you're actually getting ahead. And so, that rung in my head, and I'm always thinking about like that, as well as, especially being a recruiter, am I the most competitive candidate? It's not about,
Right.
there's
You
this
know that
second,
they're
but I remember being on the
other-
side of the recruiter and going, okay, I'm looking for the best candidate to fill this job. And there's a lot of competition out there. But if I turn that criteria on myself, am I actually the best candidate for that role? How am I differentiating myself? How am I standing out? And so, I think that's an important thing, especially as you have your eye on that next level. It's like, well, what is it that they're looking for? What does that role need? How can I get those experiences, to your point, the special projects, right? Raising my hand, for whatever comes up, so that I can actually, be the most attractive candidate when those opportunities arise.
And what you hear, just so people who are in still the academic area know, for a promotion, you need to be performing essentially the higher level role for at least a year or two before you're going to get promoted into that. And then you're going to get promoted in and still have to work your way up to the the midpoint of the role or the high point of the role. So it's always a sort of, you're always climbing.
Excellent point. Yeah, Teresa, I'd never heard that 10 years of experience equals 1 year if you're doing the same thing. So, and then Melissa, like saying, you always kind of have to keep looking up, keep freshening those skills, keep sharpening them, and keep trying to move up, because you're right. If you're doing a job at your level, you need to be doing a great job at the next level a little bit to start getting the promotion. So I hope that helps our students think about you're always going to be in learning mode and always going to be growing and developing. So hopefully that helps. Renee, do you want to, Andrea, do you want to go?
I was just going to say, especially for us women in these spaces, Black and brown women,
You bet.
Specifically,
You bet.
Get some rest. Get some rest. Get some rest. Get some rest. I'm not kidding. I am too a workhorse. I barely sleep. I probably sleep 5 hours a day. I'm not kidding you, right? Last year kicked my butt.
Balance.
Working at an organization that was deeply enthralled in the election last year. I ate, breathed, then came January and I was just like, I don't want to talk to anybody about anything ever again. But I love this work, and it made me feel so guilty because I was so burnt out. I'm talking about like really, really, really burnt down for being that worker bee, right? I work at the forum, so I help do facilitations there. I'm holding a 9-to-5. I also have my consulting business, and I'm also doing this yoga training, right? I need to be doing all these things, and that's great. And exactly what Melissa said, exactly what Teresa said, I just want to remind us all, get some rest. Take a day. Even if it's every month, you just take a day, you disconnect, lay in bed all day, get some bonbons and some chips or carrots, whatever you care about, and just rest. Just rest. It's not lazy to rest. It is an act of revolutionary experience for all of us to rest, because if our cup is empty, we can't perform. We're not going to get to the places that we need to. We're not going to be able to think clearly. And as women in these spaces, there's a lot stacked against us, and it's not our work. So
no, I completely agree. And one of my little tricks that I do, especially when I start to feel that point where I'm gonna explode, is I just go into my calendar in the next week. If there's anything that's open, I just block it out. I block out 2 whole weeks in advance. And then I put a mental health day on the calendar too.
Yes.
So like
That
that,
is so smart. I
it
love
saves
that.
my life every
Yes.
time. Like as soon as I feel that like point, I'm like, that's it. No more time. Nobody gets any more. Like I take every half an hour sliver that's in there. It's just all of it's consumed for the next 2 weeks.
Right.
And then I give myself a mental health day on top of that. And you have to. You have
Especially
to.
if you have
wonderful.
kids or people you're taking care of on top of working, forget it. Or
Well, we have to
school too. Rest.
Totally. We have to remember we're just no good if we're burned out. And, you know, we're in charge of whether we get burned out or not, because I get the theme here. We're all workhorses. We work hard and people can take advantage of that. We have to advocate for ourselves. We have to call stop sometimes. Or it's not good for us. It's not good for the company. Who are you doing a favor if you're a martyr? Nobody. So make sure you take care of yourself. Great point.
Thank you guys. Go ahead, Renee, ask your question.
Yeah, that's great. I was just gonna say, I just agree with everyone. There's always going to be work. Like if you're if you're just doing work, there's always going to be another like task that is there. So I really like how everyone was just saying like rest is really important. And for the next question, I would like to ask Melissa, can you give some like advice or tips about how we can feel empowered when we first start a job?
Absolutely. We've been looking at onboarding actually a lot recently in our, so I'm in talent acquisition. So usually onboarding isn't part of our bailiwick, but, and that's usually HR, but we've been asked to, because we're so invested in the candidate experience during the interviews and during the whole interview process and everything like that, and the offer process, and we also are responsible for talking benefits to people and things like that. So what we've been looking at is really what makes a good onboarding experience for people. But the second part is just like you have to advocate for yourself in your career and kind of figure out what makes you tick and what you want to aim for. It's also kind of like, hey, who do you know you're going to need to be interacting with for your job? Like, are you going to need to be filing contracts? Are you going to need to be dealing with legal? Are you know, because all these people, you can ask your manager to set you up on meetings as you're onboarding. So what we're trying to do is first create a roadmap to onboarding of not only who are the people you need to meet, like the IT people and the benefits people and the, stock plan people and all of that, but also who are going to be the people who are not necessarily within your immediate group, but who will make your job easier. Like if you're in the lab, who are the lab services people that you need to meet? Who's the lab manager, who's going to make your media and all of that stuff. And if you're in the animal facility, who runs that and who are you going to need to talk to about that? So there's a lot of different people that we're trying to build out, not only a roadmap of like, hey, here's what looks like a good onboarding experience, but also who are the networking contacts and the matrix contacts that you're going to be involved with once you get into an organization who are going to make your life easier. And I think that's so important is when you're in academia, it's a lot less collaborative than industry is. Even a collaboration is more like I do my work, you do your work, and then we put figures together in a paper. And so it's not as collaborative as everyone's on project teams in industry. You're in this team and you have to figure out how to work together with people all day, every day. And it's multiple teams and multiple things. So I guess and I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent, but I also think it's one of those situations where just like in the career development side of things, you have to advocate for yourself. In the industry side of things, you have to advocate for yourself in terms of meeting people that will make your job and your life easier, but also might become friends and people who, you can trade things with. So you have to kind of be ready to step outside of your comfort zone. And that's one of the things where scientists aren't always great about that. And so it's, when you go into a company, you kind of might have to not be shy or whatever. The other thing is get to know your HR business partners. Get to know your HR people. Get to know your DEI people. Refer people that are your friends and your colleagues to them. Refer people to it's one of those things where it's like the more involved in a company that you can get in the DEI initiatives and the committees and the things, the more you will get to know people and the more ingrained you will be within the company and the more rich your experience will be. Like we just had today, for example, in a DEI forum at NGM, which was about anti-Asian violence, because we've been really proactive about anti-Black and Hispanic people violence, and also about all of the different things that have been going on in our world these days. And so it was really interesting just to hear, people from my company who's a very varied company all speak about that. And so only if you get involved can you really get the heart of a company, and can you get the sense for how you can contribute to enrich that company's culture.
Thank you,
Again,
Melissa.
soapbox, sorry.
Yeah, I agree with all that you said, especially with the onboarding process. I think when I first started, I'll just give a little example. I was really thankful for Alexa. She was always there to answer. Sometimes I'd be like,
Lovely.
oh, I don't know how to do this. But then it's like, is this a dumb question? But I think whenever you have a
No
question,
dumb questions.
yeah,
It's
I think,
all just goodness.
yeah. So I was really thankful for Alexa for being there, and she was very nice and just a really nice coworker. So I think having that kind of like mentor there to help you in the beginning is really helpful. And yeah, about what you said about advocating for yourself and just interacting with the team to get to know like the work that you're going to be doing with the people that you're going to be working with. So all of that was really great.
And most people,
have to
if you join a company, they're going to be so overwhelmingly willing to help you. Sorry, Alexa, go ahead.
Oh, no worries. I was going to say thank you, Renee, that she is amazing. So she was like a
It
relief
sounds
for
like
me.
you guys had a blissful
Yeah.
onboarding.
Especially during a pandemic,
right?
which, yeah, was something different. And I know, especially for Renee. So I appreciate the shout out, Renee, but you get shouted out too, because you are amazing as well. And it was like a relief off my shoulders having you join our team, because you're great.
Thank you.
Love feeling the love.
And are we moving to the next question, Renee? Sorry, I don't want to cut you off.
Yeah, we can move.
Okay.
We're getting close to the Q&A session.
Yes, and I kind of wanted to bring it back to what Andrea and Teresa were talking about, and kind of ask about what work-life balance kind of means to you and how you are able to handle that. And just because I know you saw, you're like, I'm blocking off my calendar, I'm doing this. And if you want to expand on any of that, and it looks like Andrea's like, that doesn't exist. But I don't, if we could start with Teresa, and kind of if you want to expand on your previous responses.
Oh gosh, yeah. I think especially right now, I know that it's not unique to where I'm working. Everyone that I talk to, it just feels like everything is accelerating. Everything's moving a lot faster. We're all busier. The commute time has now been consumed with work time. The days are getting longer, and it just feels like there's no end in sight. And I think that people that had maybe some some semblance of balance. Like it's starting to feel like a never ending marathon. I was just reflecting on last year, like we didn't feel that summer break. There was nowhere to go. No one went on vacation, right? So it's just been like building and building. And there is an overall feeling of fatigue and burnout. That's just across the board. Everyone's feeling that. So work-life balance, we're working in our house. It's talk about the ultimate like commingling of that experience. For me, it's knowing the signs of imbalance, and safeguarding, right? And it comes down to just some of the basics, right? And I talked about blocking off my calendar, but it's also meditation, sleeping well, eating well, exercising, keeping connection with my friends, keeping connections with my colleagues, and being mindful of that. Because I think of myself, like I remember some great training I had called the human athlete, or the corporate athlete, and really thinking about you can't be a top performer unless you are investing in this human animal mechanism. We're organic beings, we're not machines. And so we have to think about how are we maintaining that for ourselves. And it is the alignment of everything, mind, body, spirit. And it's so important, and it's more important now than it ever has been.
Yeah, I completely agree. I was alluding to this earlier and kind of made a joke, but I was not joking when I said the level of burnout affected my mental health to the point where things that I would not normally forget to do, I was forgetting. I was losing amounts of time. So I'd be at home and then I'd like just kind of like sit at some point and I'm like, what did I even do today? Right? And I know that sounds like that doesn't happen. No, it absolutely does. When you don't have boundaries for where you work, when you work, and like those breaks, and really thinking about taking care of yourselves. One of the things that have been really helpful for me is keeping myself to certain work hours. So because I'm working from home, I don't generally have my notifications on my phone on period because I'm already at home. So the temptation to look at my phone or look at Slack outside of whatever my normal business hours are, is really, it's honestly, like I used to tell my staff all the time, it better be a fire, like a real one. Like the fire department was called. And since we're all at home, it's not gonna happen, right? Especially like in people teams or like recruiting, there's very rarely a fire in recruiting, right? There's rarely like an actual fire in people team. Now there can be, or HR, but generally speaking, it's not. And so it's really being clear with that. I'm an extreme extrovert. So it killed me not to be out and like get the energy from other people. So I had to start tricking myself. So Tuesdays and Thursdays was dress up Tuesdays and Thursdays. So I'd go over the top. I have this crown that I wear. I'll put on a nice lipstick. I don't know. Maybe I'll put on a club dress. Who knows? I don't know. But my staff knew that it was Tuesday or Thursday because I had a popping lip or I had a crown on, right? And it was just fun because I wasn't really dressing up. I didn't feel motivated, but it was fun because it was for me, but then it gave other people like, Andrea, where are you going? And I'm like, nowhere. I'm at home just talking to y'all. I'm just excited to be here. It's Tuesday, y'all. And they're like, oh yeah. And then like other people kind of got involved, right? And building those connections, exactly what Teresa said. And then those time blocks and reminding yourself, I literally, no joke, have eat, drink, and meditate 3 times a day in my calendar blocked off with alarms. Because I will forget. I will sit at my desk and not eat, not drink, not even go to the bathroom for hours. And that's wild. You're a human being. Your body has to function, right? I'll look up, it's 2 o'clock. I'm wondering why I have a huge migraine. I can barely get through my last calls of the day, right? And then I have a 14-year-old that has questions and generally doesn't talk to me until like my patience is thin. Like they have this radar that they just know when your patience is thin. It's the only time he ever talks to me at this point. But it is so important. And then I started investing in different coaching platforms to see what works to help me communicate better, to help me ideate better. I am a person that thinks out loud. That's not everybody. So how do I do that? Especially, and I'm still really early in my consulting, right? And so I have to be balanced often. Even though I'm talking this, I have to go and talk to someone else to help me also think about my own business and what I want it to be, right? And there's no shame in that. Same thing with therapy. There's all kinds of apps that are way more affordable than traditional therapy. Even if you can only go twice a month, it's better than never going, because your brain is the brain that got you here. Your brain will not get you out. I promise you. I've tried it. It doesn't work. So even if it's just changing what you're listening to in the morning, maybe it's not and I love some trap music, but maybe it's not trap music. Maybe I'm listening to a empowering podcast to just help me orient around my day, right? You'd be surprised. Those small things over time are so valuable because it's feeding you. And I think Teresa alluded this too. It's mind, body, spirit. It's not just the work. It's you. How you show up, who you are, and what you bring is what you're feeding your body. And it's not just on your plate. It's all of the things.
Right. Thank you. And
I had one quick thing I wanted to add that was so lovely. I just can't believe it took me over 50 years to learn this, and it took a good coach to figure it out, which I agree. Seek the help. You don't always know how to figure these things out on your own, but I learned recently that I'm the kind of person that I think if I get everything done, I'm going to be free. And there's never getting it all done. So I was never free. So I had to relearn how to work to get some stuff done, be free for a while, got some more stuff done, be free for a while. But that was really hard for me because I always was responsive to the to-do list, responsive to the people who needed something back to me, and always putting that first. And so now I'm learning how to, okay, I actually have 30 minutes here. I'm going to go take a walk. I actually have an hour here. I'm going to sit outside and get some sun and eat a sandwich. You know, just like taking those increments when you can get them. And especially now, and especially during COVID, and especially now that as long as we have these on us, which we always do, we have gotten to where we can't not respond to it unless we make sure we don't. So I think it's really empowering to learn how you work and talk to other people about it. They'll have observations that you might be too close to yourself to see, and then you can learn new tools. And it never stops. Like I said, I can't believe it took me over 50 years just to learn that one. It seems so simple, but it wasn't intuitive to me. So I just thought I was working hard, and hey, that's admirable. But after a while, it's not admirable if you don't have anything left to give.
right. I love learning new tools. I even, like Andrea, I turned my cell phone is on silent all day. Most of my notifications are off on most of the apps, so I don't get notifications unless I literally look into them. And it's fantastic. I even, like Teresa, started blocking off just schedules of parts of my calendar. 'Cause if not, I would literally be on Zoom 9 hours straight. And so now I have like the chance to be like, I am blocked at that moment. I'm sorry. Because otherwise I really will not have the lunch. And I do want to open it up for any questions. If anybody has any questions, feel free to raise your hand or type it in the chat. And then I did want to open to Melissa. I'm not sure if you were able to answer that or if you wanted to answer this last question about how you handle like work-life balance. What does that mean to you? While people kind of type in the chat. Oh, Melissa, you're muted.
I can answer that. So I am, as I mentioned, a workhorse, and so work-life balance hasn't been as important to me in the past as it is now. And I do think it's very important, both because now I have two kittens as well as my husband, but it's also a situation where you need to regroup, and you need and I have to say, at my last job, it was crazy, and here it's a company that values work-life balance a lot more. And so just please ask, if it's important to you, ask your company how, ask your recruiter, ask the hiring manager, what does work-life balance look like at your company before I join and commit my life to you? Because I'm all about working hard, but there has to be a balance. And I didn't realize that until I got to my current company, where people had balance. And uh and then I was like, what have I been doing this whole time? I've been working evenings and weekends and nights and everything. And so that's just what I would say is, think about what is important to you and advocate for that as well, in addition to all the other things that you have to advocate for. And it sounds like a lot of work, and it is. But if you find good managers and good recruiters and good people who will help shepherd you along the way, then you're actually going to be all set. Because if you're open to being open to asking people about how things are at the company, like, level with me. And you can always tell, do people have that, like, help me look in their eyes? Like, if you're interviewing and they're like, help me, like, you'll know, don't join that company. But it's also a situation where, if you're ready and you're primed to work hard, and it's not as important for you right now, like for me, when I was cutting my teeth on recruiting, it wasn't as important to me to have a work-life balance. It was more important for me to show what I could do, right? And so I showed what I could do, and now I have a work-life balance. But I had to work towards that, and I had to also get myself out of the mentality of working constantly 24/7, especially during shelter in place, because you do have to shut off. And obviously, I work in my apartment living room, so this is also where I watch TV. And Bay Area, lovely. I'm just saying, it's one of those things where you figure out what works for you, and you go to companies that give you what you need, and you work with people who give you what you need, or you make networking contacts with people who will eventually give you what you need, and you're in an interim role, right, until you can go to that place where you have what you need. So and I get that postdocs are that way too, right? You're supposed to be working 100 hours a week and getting everything done, and publishing and stuff like that. So there are different things for different people, and you just gotta figure out what works for you, as well as advocate for yourself.
Well said, Melissa. I think you're right. There's times in your career, maybe early or starting a brand new field or a new job, where you're going to be working a lot. But I feel like Andrea said, and Teresa, like, sometimes you just have to make that, because the work will always be there. So I don't know if we have any questions, but I definitely want to be honor everyone's time, because I know everyone's busy and maybe they're going to relax after this. Who knows? Maybe they'll have some personal time. I wanted to say thank you so much to our wonderful panelists for speaking, and for our amazing audience for listening and adding so much into the chat. It sounds like everything really resonated with you guys. So we're so grateful for you guys, for the panelists, and just hope we can have conversations like this again. Again, this is recorded, so we'll make sure you get the link to where that's at. And thank you all so much for joining us.
Thanks for having
Thank
us.
you. This is awesome.
Thank you so much. This was wonderful. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
Bye.
Enjoy your Wednesday.
Yes.
Thank you.
Oh, if you're here for WIMLA, I forgot to